So here's the thing about Book 2, Spirits from The Legend of Korra. People kind of hate it. I wouldn't say its overall rating is negative. I mean, you can glean that from its IMDb reviews, which aren't overtly terrible, but definitely not up to Avatar's usual snuff. At the very least, it's extremely divisive, which means there's a large, really loud group of people that outwardly despise this season. From perceived inaccuracies with the lore, to Korra's character herself, right down to the designs of the spirits. There's lots that people criticize about Book 2. However, when I first watched it, I was pretty obsessed with it, I won't lie, and upon every subsequent rewatch, I've only found more and more to enjoy and analyze about this season and the commentary that it offers on the Avatar as a whole, as well as the way it builds the world out in such a major and bold fashion. First, Korra's arc over the course of the season is one of the biggest problems people have with this book, but honestly, I find this season wholly necessary for her character, and that more calm and patient Korra that people attribute to the supposed improved writing of Season 3 is largely due to the journey that she takes in Book 2. In fact, I think behind Season 4, because that season's like in another league with development with Korra, this is the season where she grows the most. Korra spends a ton of time this season reckoning with her title as a now fully realized Avatar. You see, in Season 1, we really get acquainted with her tie to her bending ability, but she doesn't see herself as an Avatar quite yet, as she can't accomplish air for much of the season, and is never able to connect with her past lives. When Tarlok calls her a half-baked Avatar in When Extremes Meet, she really takes it to heart because that is what she believes deep down as well. She really didn't see herself as the Avatar yet. Understandably, as she hadn't really traveled the world or done those very Avatar-like things by the time she was 16, though she had heard the legend of Aang. But now, she's proven herself as a force to be reckoned with, and now has been given an unimaginable power that she must deal with emotionally as well as physically. I understand why people don't like that she was given her bending back at the end of Season 1. I personally disagree and think that her relearning the elements, as many suggest that they should have done, would be a little bit too repetitive of what happened in The Last Airbender. But I do actually love what this gift of her bending coming back does for her arc, because it sets Korra's self-confidence up to the highest point we've seen thus far in the series, and we see the obvious consequences that come with that. I do fully think Korra was humbled hard in Book 1, but after this win, she's really able to find her confidence again. Unfortunately, kind of going too far in the other direction, and sort of overcompensating, dismissing Tenzin and the importance of his teachings, falling victim to Unalaq's manipulation, and pushing away those close to her, those that really just want to care for her, like her father and her boyfriend. Ultimately, Korra believes that she knows best at this point, which is why she's so eager to move on from Tenzin. Unalaq sees this, and I think relates on a personal level, and is able to uniquely take advantage of this mentality, feeding into her confidence and reassuring her that she does know best, that she is all-powerful and invincible, but not really providing her any useful tools as Tenzin or actual teachers do for her to learn and grow. She keeps being told that she's the Avatar, that she can do anything, but then she's overpowered by regular spirits, and when she's in unknown areas, doesn't know how to handle them. It's not like the answer is just given to her, which I appreciate as well. It causes a fierce contradiction that Korra herself struggles to understand and process emotionally, and this causes Korra to enter a hyper-paranoid and helpless state, forcing her back into those feelings that she expected to have left behind in Book 1, in Republic City. But when they do come back, she struggles to admit her fear of the situation, as Tenzin taught her. Without him around, with Unalaq making her distrust her own family and even her own boyfriend through that separation, but not listening to any of her emotional concerns, Korra feels utterly alone, and as if she can't do anything correctly. It's all intentional on Unalaq's part, and I think blaming Korra for this division with a lot of the main cast is ultimately a mistake, considering how her perceptions were so heavily fueled by Unalaq's manipulation, someone who is a part of her family and she does generally respect and trust. I mean, he did in the Book 2 premiere, like, directly prove himself as a capable figure. It's just, you know, he's a terrible teacher because he's selfish. But you can really clearly see Korra descend into this hyper-vigilant, paranoid state where she doesn't trust anyone around her. She doesn't feel like she's capable of anything. She really hits a very low emotional point at the beginning of this season and truly feels as if she has no one in her life that she can depend on and trust. She states that Unalaq is the only one that believes in her, but again, he hardly offers her any actually valuable advice. Despite all of this, though, as much as I understand her mistakes, Korra has grown since book 1, okay? It's not as if she is reset to the beginning, and she still does have those teachings to lean on. While it is frustrating, this period of adversarial nature and Korra picking sides doesn't last for very long. As soon as Korra learns her father didn't try to attack Unalaq, she apologizes, shows immense grace and repentance, and opens herself up once again, revealing those feelings that she'd been covering up the entire past 3 episodes. She embraces her humanity, stops trying to pretend that she's perfect, to cover up every human impulse she has, like Tenzin taught her to do, and started to get her to do while they were working together in book 1, which is why it's unfortunate that she didn't continue her training with him. While I am speaking about this scene in particular, with this exploration of the Avatar and their struggle to retain their human connections and sensibilities, which they do need to succeed as the bridge between the humans and the spirits, another smart idea that comes with this is a really incredible depiction of how the Avatar deals with having a family at all. I really feel for Senna and Unalaq, and genuinely think they did a good job making them full characters with intriguing motivation. Unalaq losing his throne and settling down to start a family, instead, both him and Senna hoping for simplicity and peace for once, but then they had the Avatar. And in the first episode, Senna looks, to put it lightly, exhausted. Clearly was not easy raising Korra. It's such an interesting look at what it would be like to actually fully raise the Avatar from birth, which is something we never got any taste of in Last Airbender, as Aang was largely raised by a community of monks. Specifically Gyatso, I would say, was obviously the biggest influence on him, but never really had any actual parents to reckon with. And also he ran away when he was 12, so it's not like, you know, we had a chance to examine this dilemma at all. They feel as if Korra would move on from them and leave them one day, fulfilling her duty as the Avatar, but in the end, growing past her connection to them and leaving them behind for good, as she is all-powerful, above humans. And Korra really does struggle to accept their help and stay close to them, as Unalaq convinces her she needs to do everything by herself as if it's all her responsibility. She wants to be that self-sufficient Avatar that is able to do everything on her own, but does not realize at first that you need humanity, earthly connections, and humility to be able to achieve that conclusive power. That's something that the legends that she's heard about never tell you, about how hard they struggled. It takes Katara in book 4 illuminating what Aang felt after losing his culture, how devastating that must have been, the emotional lows that they encountered on their journey, because I'm sure all she was told about was the epic triumphs, how the Avatar always wins. So it's understandable why she would latch on to this perception at different times throughout the series. But what Korra learns after the entire opening conflict with the Civil War is that she will always need her parents' love and support, and that they mean a great deal to her as a person. Her being the Avatar does not divide her from those connections, and in fact, she can use that love and the strength that she can draw from it to become a stronger Avatar herself, a better protector of both humanity and the spirits. And that is a gorgeous message, in my opinion. One that I feel book 2 uniquely conveyed and doesn't get a lot of credit for. They even use Unalaq so well as an antithesis for this revelation, showing how he gradually threw away all of his humanity, abandoning his brother, casting aside and injuring his own children, willing to plunge them into eternal darkness, even, and connecting so heavily with only the spirits. They understand each other at the beginning, but we are shown that Korra's level of genuine compassion and empathy when she takes the harsh turn away from Unalaq, leaning into her personal connections. Honestly, even with her rash decision making, like assuming that the Northern Water Tribe was up to everything, I fully supported her in Peacekeepers, with her explosion at the president and trying to recruit the United Forces included. I don't know why all of these people advocate for her to stay neutral in this conflict. Unalaq overtly stole the Northern Throne and is now invading the South. Why would the Avatar stay neutral in that? Did Aang stay neutral in the 100-Year War? That just makes no sense to me as an opinion. I won't lie though, I did roll my eyes when Mako and Asami got back together and all that relationship drama ensued. But I will add, personally, some of this love triangle storyline was absolutely necessary in helping Korra and Mako realize that they weren't right for one another, which people often gloss over as it's attached to their least favorite part of the series, but is honestly such an important point of development for both of their characters, and is why Book 2 is such an important transition from Book 1 to Book 3. It's very mature for Korra to admit, despite her feeling emotionally connected to him still, that her and Mako do not really work together as a couple, and that she herself became rather toxic during their breakup, which is absolutely true. They clearly were not ready for something this serious, and being able to realize that and resolve to move forward as friends, forgive each other for the pain they caused, and try to do better to one another going forward is an incredible signal that Korra is moving towards becoming an adult at the end of the season. But due to all this emotional turmoil, she almost runs away from all her friends, and then, after being attacked by a dark spirit, she's forced to plainly confront her identity after so long, communing with her avatar spirit in a more intimate way than she ever has. I love that she not only sees her past lives, but her own spirit as well. She really has to reckon with who she is and who she wants to be. And Juan reveals to her the power of forging your own path, even when the road in front of you is completely obscured, completely unsure. I mean, when he steals that fire and is banished into the spirit wilds, which first of all sounds like a straight ancient religious text concept, appropriately, because that's basically what this is. He's completely alone. He has nowhere to turn and chooses to learn the ways of the spirits, respect nature, and eventually sever Rava and Vatu in an attempt to be kind to Vatu. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you watch that episode and you're like, Juan, are you a goddamn moron? Because this guy is clearly evil. But I appreciate him not for judging based on looks. You know what? You gotta give him credit for that, okay? It's definitely a crucial mistake, but it's also one that he takes extensive action to fix, and the result is this entire series existing. Sounds a lot like Korra's journey, too, where even through his mistakes that result from his perhaps overzealous and rash nature, Korra opening the portal, he's able to fight to preserve balance and work hard to achieve it even when the tides are turned completely against him. As Tenzin says later on, Juan became a legend because of who he was, and it was his determination and fierce ambition that helped him to create the Avatar in the first place. It isn't just about the spirit of Rava, though it makes sense that the Avatar is part spirit, but it's mostly about who they choose to inhabit, their own personality, the challenges they face, their positive traits. All of that leads the Avatar to success with Rava's help. Power is nothing without someone who is able to effectively make use of it. I especially love her statement at the end of the beginning's pair of episodes where she states that, "My name is Korra and I'm the Avatar." She does have that title on her back, but she is Korra, a person first. It's a subtle distinction, but it speaks a lot to what this entire flashback has really taught her, and her personality and humanity is what will lead her to becoming a truly great Avatar and be able to affect so much change. And after all this development, she's able to return to Tenzin, fully admit her mistakes, convey his value to her, and work to right what she has wronged in the very beginning.
I can't even get you into the spirit world.
Everything Unalaq taught me was to help himself. Everything you've done was meant to help me. I am so sorry for turning my back on you as my mentor. I need you now more than ever.
I won't let you down.
This is honestly textbook quality character writing and development. It's wild to me that people complain about Korra this season. I know she can be annoying in the first few episodes, but I love how much she grew and how understanding she became as a result of it. She not only listens to Tenzin for guidance, but even recognizes the truth in what Unalaq said, making the decision to keep the portals open, which I'll talk more about later this video, leading to some of the greatest and most positive sweeping changes in both series, the Air Nation coming back. She's able to become more patient and understanding of others, others, seeing their point of view and not wrapping herself in her own pursuits, selfishly barreling forward without caring about how it affects those around her. She grows into an extremely full, confident, tolerant person, and one that felt rewarding to see, especially after her struggle with her personal connections throughout this season. And even though she does go to extreme lengths to define people as her enemies and quickly dismisses their help, and I understand why that would frustrate people, I feel that the extreme position that she was put in with conflicts to her own family, in between the North and the South, her duty as an avatar, and what Unalaq is telling her, is such an extreme position and forced her into survival mode more so than we've ever seen thus far, which is why I appreciate how much she develops from it, because she really does hit quite an emotional low. Another reason I appreciate this season is for giving us more insight into the inner workings of the Avatar spirit itself, its creation, and its connection to the spirit world. One thing that I really struggled to resonate with in The Last Airbender, even though I loved the concept itself, was the spirit world and the general outline of how spirits work. Well, I loved the mystery of how the spirits controlled the moon, the ocean, guarded the forests. Other spirits, like Ko or that meditating monkey, sort of confused that notion, and the little time we spent inside the spirit world did not do much to convey the importance of the spirits themselves, and oftentimes to me they just felt like a plot mechanism to give Aang power or knowledge. Again, just a small critique, I still love The Last Airbender and think the spirit world is a genius concept. I just think Korra developed it in a really important way. Because as well, Iroh's connection and ability to see the spirits in the physical world, despite Aang declaring himself as in the spirit world, and his spirit is appearing in the village where Katara is honestly just a tad confusing for me what the spirit world actually was supposed to be, which was never really a problem per se, as the confusing and generally not understandable nature of the spirit world was part of its charm. Korra's rules and more firm explanations for how the spirit world operates were much more welcome to me personally, specifically because they were able to use the spirit world in the plot without resolving to just have it provide exposition or make things easier for Korra herself. In fact, it presents a ton of problems. For example, in that show, it's rather unclear how one enters the spirit world, or really if the spirit world looks any different than the physical world. Aang pops in there accidentally the first time, but as we know later on, concentration is needed, and Aang ends up in a completely separate location, only coming back when Heibai helps him, which is more what we're used to in Korra. I feel like the first time when we meet Heibai, they didn't have it entirely figured out, and later that season, they kind of nailed the rules more down. However, there is an additional line where Aang and Katara express his body can't be moved or else it's a problem because he can't find his way back, but then it kind of just isn't really a problem at all. Aang goes back and is like, oh no, my body's gone. But then he just beams straight back to it, like without any effort. So did it really matter all that much? Also, Katara and everyone else can see his spirit while he's doing this. Why? Last time he was quote-unquote in the spirit world and all blue and shit, Katara couldn't see him. It's just very confusing for me. Whereas in Korra, I feel that everything has much clearer guidelines, using the most important aspects from The Last Airbender more clearly. Meditating into the spirit world is still extremely difficult, as Korra needs Jinora to guide her at first, but can become something that is easier as your own spiritual capability grows. When you enter, you seem to go to a corresponding location in the spirit world from the physical world, as when Korra and Jinora both journey in, they end up in the exact same place, hinting that the relative place meditated from affects where you end up, and this is confirmed later by when Korra follows Zahir and Aiwei in as well. Not only this, but they state explicitly that you can't bend within the spirit world and establish the now closed portals as a previous method for connecting the two worlds together at the poles, also retroactively explaining why the spiritual energy was so great in The Last Airbender at those locations in the first place. They also developed the fact that was mentioned in The Last Airbender about spirit world and the physical world being aligned during the solstice, and used that to further the story this season. God, it's all so fantastic how they use what they built in The Last Airbender and just take it so much further. They even explain why Aang is able to be seen as a spirit to some when Jinora projects her spirit outwards, that she can meditate and detach her spirit from her body in the physical world without necessarily going all the way into the spiritual world itself. Spirits can do the same for the physical world, seemingly meditating into it, but not showing their true power or spiritual potential as we see with Jinora and the Dragonfly Bunny spirits, who are much bigger inside the spirit world, because they were essentially doing what Jinora and Korra are doing into the spirit world. They are projecting their spirit, but they aren't taking necessarily all of their abilities with them. And it just kind of paints things as more equal between the humans and spirits as it did before, that I think these rules in Korra really helped out with. So I really appreciated all of that establishing lore and everything that they did to make it more clear about the purpose of the spirit world in this universe. And the way Unalaq is able to twist the rules of the spirit world in his favor, taking Jinora's spirit hostage and forcing Korra to open the other portal, which would cause spiritual energy to rise high enough for Vaatu to break free, it's also intricate, and it cleanly uses the rules of the spirit world without bending them too harshly or making things unbelievable. Again, it takes what it develops from The Last Airbender and just moves it a step further. Some people say they stretched some of it, but I think they just clarified a lot of things that were left entirely ambiguous in The Last Airbender. The lion turtle gifting Aang the knowledge of how to bend his own spirit and the energy within others was previously kind of an issue for me. While I did enjoy its design, obviously, it's fucking gorgeous, and definitely saw that there was more that they intended with this ancient being than what they showed you in that episode, I did feel it was also rather convenient for Aang to get that right at the time he needed it. Korra, in Beginnings, though, was able to show us the lion turtle's true purpose, how they've always acted as guardians of humanity for tens of thousands of years. When the world was balanced before Wan, humans took refuge on them and drew power from them so that the wilds wouldn't wipe them out. And when the world became unbalanced again, thanks to Ozai, one turtle, I'm assuming the one who possessed the power of water, because swim, oh god, this video is getting too long, I'm sort of losing my mind, decided to provide wisdom that would aid the Avatar in retaining balance, as they had realized the power of the Avatar to do so long ago with Wan and Rava, allowing humans to venture off with their own bending, knowing that they would be there to protect them. It's just so much great retroactive explanation that you can just tell they had always intended, but just never showed you before, and one that made even the finale of The Last Airbender more rewarding in hindsight. They also elaborate on this concept of bending energy within oneself, as the ancients did, and using the power of harmonic convergence, Korra is able to create a giant spiritual projection to fight Unavatu. It's honestly wild to see it. I get why it throws a lot of people off because it's so anime, but personally, I loved it, as another display of how to use this ancient knowledge that the lion turtle once provided Aang, which he evidently passed down to Tenzin, and I thought that that was a cool detail that it made its way through the generations to help the Avatar again. I was basically impressed with how they were able to utilize the rules that they had established for the spirit world to create a not only thoroughly exciting climax, but also one that felt completely grounded within the world they had built, and one that used the best concepts from The Last Airbender, expanding on them as much as they could. Just being able to bring that concept back and use it along with Korra discovering her inner power apart from Rava, realizing that she is strong herself, that she has value without that title, was such a beautiful, beautiful writing choice. And it wasn't just a gorgeously animated climax with the giant kaiju fight, and of course it is that, but it's also wonderfully written and so important for Korra's character, and a great tie-in to the internal lore, the very old, original lore of this universe, which I just felt was perfect. They also increase the number of spirits that we see by like a lot, giving us a ton of variety and extremely creative depictions of these beings. And I know that many feel that the designs were lacking at times, but I feel that largely applies to those corrupted dark spirits that Unalaq and Vaatu turn together. And they're really only simplistic because they need to draw armies of them marching against the heroes all at once. Like, they had hundreds of them on the screen. Not to mention that it actually kind of plays into the concept of balance quite well. How when the spirits become unbalanced, their identities are entirely wiped away, and what makes them unique and beautiful is replaced for some unified, generic, dark design. The actual designs of the spirits, when they're balanced with light and dark inside them, are very intricate, detailed, and oftentimes mysterious. But sometimes they're giant spirits, sometimes they're tiny, sometimes they resemble animals, plants, and sometimes they're wholly their own thing. Sometimes they can speak, sometimes they can't. And I loved every single interpretation of it. It gives that perfect illusion of another world that we can't fully understand, populated by thousands and thousands of beings that we probably won't ever meet. And as much as people fault this book for how they oversaturated the amount of spirits or something like that, I appreciate that they went so far in that direction and portrayed a whole Studio Ghibli-like world that just dove so deep into the fantasy concept, and I appreciated every bit of it so much, as well as how your emotions can affect your surroundings in the spirit world, all such beautiful concepts, and things that helped Korra develop forward as well. Great tie-ins to the story. Another thing this book did a fantastic job of is establishing stark cultural differences between the northern and southern tribes, and using the time between The Last Airbender and Korra extremely wisely in developing the relationship between these two nations. There's a series of shots in Civil Wars Part 1 that I have gushed over online several times now, where two groups of waterbenders from the north and south face off against one another, and the director and animators took their time to portray very noticeable differences in how each group bends their water. The northern soldiers bend flows with more rigid turns and stricter positioning, while the southern soldiers flow with more ease and less structure. It's a tiny detail that I feel adds so much to the world building of this show, and is part of why these two series are both a level above so many other fantasy shows. Not to mention that the style, wardrobe, imagery, and the values of the two tribes are uniquely distinguished from one another, and present a wildly different interpretation of the waterbending culture that we saw in The Last Airbender. It's a smart development of what was previously established, where the South was largely small villages, divided and not particularly a united tribe in the era of the 100-Year War, largely thanks to the Fire Nation and that war, in fact. However, the North was more protected and had a secure stronghold they could defend, and thus was able to retain much of their individual culture throughout the years, eventually attempting to spread it to the South and connect them as a nation, in their eyes repairing the damage that the Fire Nation did. However, quite realistically, as the show is great at establishing locations and moving them through modern eras with down-to-earth developments, improvements, and flaws, the South develops their own identity through time as the generations move away from those who likely initially settled from the North and were instead raised entirely in the South, which now has bustling cities and villages. Well, not quite cities, I would say, but, you know, close to it. As well as much more connection to the rest of the world than they ever previously thought possible. And they even have the through line of Tonrock's usurped position as chief of the northern tribe for some political and family drama, showing some infighting and injustice that has occurred throughout the years as well, and concretely links the goings-on in politics with the current issues. I love how uniquely alive this world feels, and the relationship between the North and South is a great example of that. I felt that this Civil War was 100% earned, and I appreciate that they spent so much time developing these different locations and showing how the years have treated them and what that has done to create villains in fact this new series. You know, a lot of this that happened in between The Last Airbender and Korra creates the conflicts that Korra has to solve, which I feel is just, you know, great world building. Another thing this book really nails, and that most people actually continually praise about it, is Tenzin's development, which is incredibly thoughtful and well developed as the season progresses. We get a clear picture of how Aang treated his children as a father. He was wonderfully kind, I'm sure. I resent people who think or say that he was a, quote, deadbeat dad, because he loved all of them. But he also had a very obvious favorite, and that was Tenzin, since he was an airbender. As a result of this, Tenzin was always given a heavy burden to bear, and took too much responsibility onto his own shoulders at far too young an age, which only developed as he grew into an adult. And as his sister states, he thinks that he is a savior who has to carry on his father's legacy single-handedly. It's a very similar issue that Korra works through this season and also last season, and he even has similar moments of impatience, stubbornness, and refusal to help that show some really clear similarities between the two characters and highlights why Tenzin has always been such an effective mentor to Korra. He understands what she's feeling, and he connects his sense of self and his identity so closely to Aang's that when he inevitably doesn't measure up or fit into that mold that he tries to stuff himself into, his self-esteem takes a major hit. Even after he's able to allow Jinora to lead Korra into the spirit world, he feels that it's his fault for her being subsequently trapped there, and relapses further into this I have to save everyone and be a perfect unyielding model for all airbenders mentality. It takes him being confronted with his father's spirit, or at least that's what he thinks at first, bluntly constantly stating that he will never be him, and he should only ever resolve to be his own man. And I love that, of course, as a message is so important for so many people to hear, and I think, honestly, is crucial for a lot of people growing up, especially adolescents who this show was aimed towards. One of the best parts is that Aang's image is, of course, the only way that his brain can ultimately convince himself of this fact, but once he breaks through that barrier, he realizes that it was his own mental fortitude the entire time. Aang's spirit did not show up to him here. Tenzin is able to clear the fog using his own clarity. He is the one who realized all this after being forced to confront it thanks to the fog's hallucinations. But the fact that Tenzin is able to come to this realization and use what he's learned to further Korra's arc is some excellent writing for a mentor that we don't usually get in these types of shows. Oftentimes, the teachers have already completed their own training, their own story, so to speak, but having Tenzin find himself during Korra's was such a pleasant surprise and an excellent depiction that people are never really done growing as human beings. You know, Tenzin may be older and way more knowledgeable, but it doesn't mean he has all the emotional tools he needs just yet to be satisfied with himself. This really helped me bond greatly with Tenzin as a person, helped me relate to him more, to the point where I actively cry in Book 3 consistently when he's overpowered by the Red Lotus. I think that a ton of that is due to all of this work that they do with him in Book 2, which is so wonderfully written, and a really important reason why you can't count this season out when it comes to Avatar. Another thing I loved about this book was the lots and lots of politics. I always felt that one of the strongest storylines in The Last Airbender involved their time in Ba Sing Se, and how the politics of this city put up severe roadblocks in front of their goals for the Earth Kingdom and their role in the war. The addition of President Raiko is an extremely clever decision to convey the ramifications of Book 1. Here, thanks to Amon's revolution and non-benders making their voices heard, a non-bending president was elected democratically to better represent the average citizen of Republic City. And so, he's a bit selfish in pursuit of serving his country and providing aid to those who perhaps were previously marginalized, because he refuses to help in anything that doesn't directly involve the citizens of Republic City, which I found was incredibly realistic for a world leader's decision-making and compelling as a conflict for Korra. Her going behind his back to General Raiko is 100% treason. But I thought these extreme political consequences that the Avatar found themselves in was a great indicator of just how much times have changed since The Last Airbender. It isn't just a rally your friends around the world to fight the bad guys situation anymore, and politics get in the way of even those you trusted coming to your side. Not to mention, it's never as simple as it was in the 100-Year War. In Ba Sing Se, it wasn't all that simple because they were basically bad guys too, but still. Korra assuming that the bombing at the cultural center was obviously the North, even though Mako has some evidence that might prove it was perhaps an inside job, and it was an inside job. That level of complexity, Korra was not ready to face as the Avatar, and now she is very emotionally connected to her family, so I understand why she is very headstrong during this arc inside Republic City at trying to get the president to fight a war in the South. It is a supremely frustrating plotline, but I think it was welcome in this ever-changing world. We got a bit of a glimpse of it with the easily manipulated council, but President Raiko is less villainous than Tarlok was, and more realistic in his single-minded selfishness. I liked that we had a political opponent that really wasn't evil, just more cowardly. And I enjoyed how it was able to divide up Team Avatar a bit, with Mako choosing to side with his duty to the city, and Korra insisting that he had a duty to side with her and the South. Again, a lot of people hate to see them fighting, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just a sucker for some drama because I'm a messy bitch? I'm not sure. But I genuinely enjoyed this plotline because of how complex all of the motivations are. I understand Mako's side, and I understand Korra's side. And they go even further with political commentary this season by having Varrick involved, where even though Varrick is quote-unquote on the southern side, he is still profiting off of the war and actively trying to start a big one so that he can make even more money off of it. And we even have Team Avatar directly getting involved in propaganda films. It's interesting to see how swiftly these issues come about and how Team Avatar kind of gets entangled in them because they don't understand that complexity complexity because they don't understand the political complexity of what they're endorsing there. It's very interesting, and I think it played on the political dilemmas that Team Avatar had to face really well, including Varric's takeover of Asami's company and Mako's kind of feud investigation with him. This season also presents some pretty intense and extremely rattling consequences, as you can tell by the fact that everyone complains about the past lives being destroyed every time this show is discussed. Want to hear my hot take? They should never bring those past lives back. I think it would be a critical mistake and an insult to what they were doing with Book 2 and the message they were trying to convey. I'd see that as them caving to the fans' demands instead of sticking by their guns, their initial idea, which I don't really want them to do. I respect them more for sticking to it and doubling down and taking it further, especially since the entire idea of removing the past lives contributes greatly to the concept of the climax of Book 2, the end of the old era and the beginning of a new one. Korra heralds in this new change and has fundamentally altered the position and duty of the Avatar going forward. It honestly makes sense to me that she'd be the only past life for the next Avatar, as I'd imagine they'd probably rely on her most heavily anyhow, because she's gonna be the only one who could provide context and guidance for this new era that the other Avatars wouldn't really understand. She has a unique perspective. Plus, I just love the absolute cojones on the writers of this show. The willingness to have such a huge consequence is very brave and, in my opinion, makes Korra's journey all that more compelling to watch and rewatch. It's a painful scene. To see her lose this part of herself, even seeming a bit like an allegory for assault, given her overt helplessness and Unalaq's joy in beating her down. But her ability to come back afterwards and still move forward is one of the most powerful messages that Korra as a series has to offer, and it comes mostly from this book. Additionally, keeping the spirit portals open is one of the most dynamic changes to the Avatar world, and one that opens up so many possibilities for storylines and fun world building in the future, which they definitely do capitalize on. Oh man, I am so tired of hearing people say shit like, oh, well now Ko the Face Stealer can enter the human world, so Korra just killed everyone, I guess. Gotta be one of the most basic and bland takes I've ever seen. The emphasis that is put on Ko is so unbelievable, given that he was in like one scene. First of all, did he show up after Korra opened the portals in this show or in the comics? I think the fuck not. Ko's motivation is not supposed to be fully understood by the audience. They're not completely malicious or evil and just want to gobble up every face that exists. No spirit is. Yes, they do seem to delight in stealing faces and tormenting humans a bit, but have they ever shown a desire to destroy all of humanity or upset balance in any way? I think the fuck not. They seem twisted to us because, well, I mean, the concept of them is horrifying. But to Ko, this is just their nature. I don't think that they want to upset the balance of Earth in any way, because they have been there since the beginning, and we're supposed to be there to preserve balance in some way. I can't imagine what purpose Ko serves, but they're there for a reason. They also show an elaborate knowledge of the ancient spirits, such as Tui and La, and how they interacted with humanity. Ko is unsettling, to say the least. But do they want to upset balance or destroy things that these other spirits fight to protect? I don't think so. In fact, I'm inclined to believe that Ko would respect Korra for her decision to keep the portals open and to involve spirits more in the goings-on of the physical world. And I'm not inclined to believe he would take advantage of that either. But that's just my personal opinion. But most importantly about this decision, it's what's best for the balance of the world. Rava and Vaatu were never meant to be separated. Even Wan recognized that that was a mistake after he saw its effects on humanity and the spirits. Vaatu was only imprisoned and the spirit portals closed so that Wan could, quote, teach humanity to respect the spirits, and obviously to make sure Vaatu couldn't be freed. And then, you know, lots of history happened and we got a little sidetracked with humanity's personal issues because we started feuding with each other. Yay! Let's restart the culture war. Unalaq, for how terrible he was, helped guide the Avatar back to being the true bridge between humanity and the spirits. Not the bridge between their worlds, but their species. Not in the sense that they're the only way to communicate with them, but they are the one to preserve balance between them and humanity and will help them to live together peacefully. Yes, even if Ko shows up in the physical world. The redistribution of the wilds and the claiming of parts of industrialized Republic City by nature and the spirits was so beautiful to me, and meshing those environments together to represent a new world forming in this completely fresh era is just the icing on the cake for the concept of us entering this new age. Korra changed the world, creating harmony between spirits and humans like was always intended, and they do a great job of conveying the gravity of that, and what is necessary to be able to make those severe changes. Korra goes through so much growth, and the reward is her being able to make some extremely controversial and unique decisions, and some that, again, makes some extremely positive changes, and sure, upsets the citizens of Republic City in the short run, but eventually works to preserve balance for the entire world. I especially love later on when they show the homeless guy from season 1 who helped with the radio, bonding with a bunch of spirits and living with them in the wild, as they have provided a home for him as well. It's just such a great example of this harmony that she has caused, and I love the spirits being a part of the physical world because it just makes the universe feel so much more colorful and unique from the modern world, which I appreciate in the fantasy setting, as well as how grounded it is. I like that they're able to toe that line very well, and I think that they do a great job of that in Korra. But if there was anything you didn't agree with or anything you want to add, feel free to comment below. We love hearing from you guys and discussing further, and let us know what you think we should do in the future. But if you want to see videos before they come out here on YouTube, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/PosiTVty. There you get extra content, unedited essays. They're so messy, like this one, especially when they're long. If the video is like over 30 minutes, guys, I probably went on an absolute tangent at one point and then just cut the entire thing out. So go to Patreon for that, and I appreciate any support though. So being here on YouTube also means a lot to me, and does a lot to spread positivity in this world we're living in today. So thank you so much for subscribing, liking, doing all that wonderful stuff, and I will see you for the next video, whatever that may be. In the meantime, tell yourself that you have value. Tell yourself that you love yourself. You deserve it. Give yourself a nice break, a pat on the back. You're doing okay. And I'm gonna give this season one final point for making Korra's dad an absolute dilf. Okay, bye!